In addition to the early ziggurats that we find in the city of Uruk in Sumer, we also find objects that show innovations made to create a pictorial tradition illustrating the importance of the ruler in society. One of these objects is an object that's come to be known as the Warka Vase. And we call it a vase, but that's really kind of misleading. Although it is a vessel, it is not a utilitarian object. It's not meant to be used. It is not made of clay and thrown on a wheel, but rather carved from alabaster. So not molded, but carved. It stands at over 3 feet tall and weighs over 600 pounds. So this is not meant to be a portable object carried around from place to place. This is an object that is meant to be put in a place of importance and is meant to be admired and valued. In other words, it's a sacred object. It was found in 1934 by German excavators working in Uruk at the temple complex of Inanna. And Inanna is the goddess of love, fertility, and war, and one of the main patrons of the city of Uruk. So it was definitely found in a sacred place. It was found with other valuable objects and was probably one of a pair of vases. So given the significant size of the vase, where it was found, and the precious material from which it was carved, not to mention the complexity of the decoration, which we're going to talk about in a moment, it was clearly an object of monumental importance. The relief carvings, and by that I mean the imagery that is carved into the side, and we will talk about relief when we look at Egyptian art, Greek art, Roman art. Relief refers to the almost three-dimensional carving that is raised up off of a flat surface. This is a very shallow relief, meaning that it's very low. We also might say low relief. As we look at Greek and Roman art, we'll see higher reliefs in which the figures or the pictorial decoration is even more three-dimensional, projects further out from the flat surface. But here we're looking at very low relief. So the relief carving on the exterior of the vase runs around its entire circumference. And here I'm showing you 3 different views of the same vase. These aren't 3 different vases, but rather this is so you can see that the imagery ran across the entire surface of the vase. It is organized into 4 different bands. The bottom band, another band right above the bottom, a middle band, and a top band. These bands are what art historians like to call registers. And you might think of registers as the organizational method used in modern day comic strips. It is meant to illustrate different moments in time, different scenes, but essentially is a way to organize lots of different images. Let's look at the imagery starting at the bottom. In the bottom register, we see a pair of wavy lines, which is meant to reference probably the riverbed. And above those wavy lines, we see reeds and grain emerging. So the grain is probably barley, and the reeds punctuate the different barley plants. These are 2 of the most important agricultural harvests of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in southern Mesopotamia. And you'll notice that there's kind of a satisfying rhythm to these plants and this alternation of the plants that is echoed in all of the other bands as well. It also serves to bring our eye around the circumference of the vase. It almost makes us, this rhythm almost makes us want to turn it and see that rhythm play out. Above this, we see sheep marching to the right in a tight formation as though they are being herded. And this illustrates a method of tending animals. And this particular livestock is really important in the agrarian society of Uruk as well. The band above the sheep here is blank. And it might have had a painted decoration that has since faded away. Above this band is a group of identical men marching to the left. So the men, 9 of them, are marching in the opposite direction from the sheep. Each of them holds a vessel in front of their face, which appear to contain the different products of the Mesopotamian agricultural system: fruit, grain, wine, and mead. The men are all naked and muscular, and like the sheep beneath them, they are closely grouped in an even rhythmic way. Nude figures in the ancient Near East are meant to be understood as humble or lower class, so we can probably assume that these men are servants or slaves. The top register, unfortunately, has suffered a lot of damage, and you can see that here. You see it's kind of a piece that has been inserted here to make it seem a little bit more whole. But enough survives that we can still read the scene. At the center of the scene, there appears to be a woman here and a man on the other side, who you can't see in this view. And between them is a smaller naked male that is holding a container of what looks like another agricultural product that he is offering to the woman. We can identify this figure as a woman by her long robe and this headdress, which again, we're missing some of it. It probably included a pretty elaborate crown on her head. Behind her are 2 reed bundles here that are symbols of the goddess Inanna, who is assumed the woman represents. The man that she faces is entirely broken off, and we're only left with the bottom of his garment, if you could see it on the other side. However, men with similar robes are often found in contemporary sealstone engravings and are based on these. And based on these, we can reconstruct him as probably a king with a long skirt and a beard and a headband. The rest of the scene is found behind the reed bundles in the back of Inanna. And here we find 2 horned and bearded rams. And here is one of them, carrying platforms on their back on which statues stand. The statue on the left carries a cuneiform sign, which we can see here, and it includes the character N, E-N, the Sumerian word for chief priest. The one on the right, before the Inanna, holds a reed bundle. And behind the rams is a whole bunch of tribute gifts, including 2 large vases, one here and one here, which look a lot like the Warka vase. And remember, it was one of 2 vases. So on the top register, which is arguably the most busy of the 3 registers, we get some hints at what the meaning of this vase might be. The simplest way to interpret it is that that a king, presumably of Uruk, is celebrating Inanna, who is one of the most important goddesses. A more detailed of this reading scene might suggest maybe a sacred marriage between the king, acting as the chief prince of the temple, and the goddess. And this union would guarantee for Uruk agricultural abundance that we are seeing with all of the different products and the tributes carried behind the rams. In other words, the worship of Inanna by the king of Uruk is the purpose of this vase and shows the importance of the ruler in presenting tributes to the divine patron of the city. This is one of the chief responsibilities of the king, and is how he can be a responsible governor and proprietor of the agricultural wealth of the city-state.